Yeah, got it.
Greetings, everyone. This is going to be our inaugural, the first of hopefully many more English language programs. We realize there's a deficit for the non-Armenian speaker in getting news, especially news from the National Democratic Alliance, which is in a media blockade. So the three of us, Hamlet Sarkisyan, director and writer from Los Angeles, California, Martin Harutyunyan, a multi-instrument musician from Boston, and myself, Gokor Yevnukyan, will be trying to cover some topics, answer some questions that is of interest for the Armenian-American community. We know for a long time the Armenian-American community was resolved to listening what the quote-unquote classic organizations had been feeding them, whether that be the Assembly or ANCA or AGBU. Now, I think even those second, third, fourth generation Armenians are looking for different answers, realizing that for decades, we've just gone down the same rabbit hole. We do have some pre-sent questions from some American Armenians that I'd like to address, and the way we'd like to do it is I'll read the questions, and both Hamlet and Martin will each give their perspective, and I'll jump in. The main topic, as you know, the title of the program is the Armenian-American Perspective. What can the diaspora, specifically the US diaspora, which is what we represent, what can they do, if anything, to assist in building the statehood? And one of the questions I had, which I think is a good one to start with, is should the diaspora even be involved with Armenia's internal politics? Hamlet, Can, let's start with you. What do you have to say about that?
Hi, Gokorjan. The simple question is, for a country like Armenia, who is so isolated, geographically, culturally, it's very isolated where Armenia is. So as a matter of fact, it's not only should diaspora be involved, it's a necessity for the diaspora to be involved in the Armenian politics. But they cannot do it by themselves. There must be a need from Armenian people in Armenia, not only just the government, first of all from the government, but also from the people. There must be a need of this diaspora and Armenia connection. And so far, I'm not seeing this need on a mass scale. I'm seeing, of course, there are people who are intelligent and they get it that, listen, this is a big asset to Armenia. It's actually, there are only two people in the world who have this power. It's Jewish people who have this powerful diaspora and the Armenian people. Imagine we have only 2.5 million living in Armenia and 7.5, 8 million living outside of Armenia. And all this power that we have is absolutely ignored by Armenian government, by the Armenian political elites. I don't see no steps done from them. So it's difficult for us from here to try to advise, to get engaged, to do something with them if this need is not expressed by them. Do you see what I mean?
I agree.
Okay, I'll have Martin continue and then I'll add if you want.
Martin Can, what would you say about whether this diaspora should even be involved with internal Armenian politics?
Well, the Armenian diaspora is part of the Armenian nation. So, it's a, if we're talking about statehood, we're talking about the nation. The diaspora is just another integral part of that. There's no question that diaspora should be involved. That shouldn't even be a question.
I just add, for example, let's say right now in Israel, they live approximately 600 to 900,000 Americans. Imagine the population is 9 million. 600 to 900,000 Americans live there. That's almost like what, 10%?
10%.
How many American Armenians do live in Armenia? very few. You know, but this Armenia, this Israel, these American Jews who live in Israel, it didn't happen in the air. There was a consolidated effort by the nation, by government. Programs were put together. There was thought behind it. You see, we don't have it because our Ministry of Diaspora is very weak. I mean, these people, I mean, I almost 4 decades.
Actually,
Yes.
sorry to interject, but there is no Ministry of Diaspora.
I was going to say weak or non-existent.
You're right. There used to be a Ministry of the Diaspora, which was completely dissolved.
Yes. So I have actually I actually have an idea about that. I think this is all done purposely. We are cut off from Armenia purposely, and the Russian politics and it's true that when the NDA claims that we are an occupied country, Armenia is an occupied country, so they don't have sovereignty and there's no independence, so there's no independent thought. You see, Soviets succeeded tremendously in Armenia. This I know from my father's connection to his friends. My father was very close friends with Soviet dissident Natalia Gorbanevskaya. And there is a letter exchange that they did, and this Natalia Gorbanevskaya was saying that, let's say in Baltic republics, KGB and the network of KGB was approximately 30 to 40,000 people. And in Armenia, they were thinking it's 3 times that size. You see, 60 to 90,000 people. So the Soviets wanted to create Homo Sovieticus. Homo Sovieticus was a new man, you know, that was thinking along Marxism-Leninism. And they succeeded tremendously. And they most succeeded, besides Russia, among the 15 republics, to do this in Armenia. So a lot of the population is Homo Sovieticus. So when Soviet Union collapsed, the Homo Sovieticus is confused because they do not know where to be, because they've been cut off from their national roots. They've been cut off from their culture, from their roots, and now they were just out there in the island and there were never connections made to diaspora. Imagine, you can look at Armenian media and you hardly hear the name Western Armenia. It's like it doesn't exist. So you see, there's this, unless this awareness comes into Armenian people in Armenia, that they see value in it, they understand they will benefit from it. I don't know what can we do from here, to be honestly.
Well, speaking of Western Armenia, you know, Pashinyan even said we should forget about Ararat. It's not ours. The one thing that almost every single Armenian has held as a symbol of our nation, Pashinyan overnight said, no, that's not ours. Let's forget about it. So if we forget about Ararat, the rest of Western Armenia is nonsense. Well, I'm glad. I have nothing to add to that. I'm glad we fill in that it's not only should we must. It's an obligation. And as Martin said, the diaspora is a part of Armenia, just like Artsakh is a part of Armenia, just like Western Armenia is a part of Armenia. The second question was an interesting one. This came, I should have asked for name and age, but I'm assuming this is a young man. It says, I consider myself Armenian, but never have not been to Armenia yet, though I have a grasp of the language, history, culture, etc. How can I help to rebuild our statehood from here, the US? Martinjan, what would you say to this individual?
Well, there are many ways you can contribute to the development of the nation. First and foremost, I think being informed. I think a lot of diasporan Armenians, unfortunately, are not fully informed or aware of what is actually happening in Armenia, what has happened in Armenia. I think major barrier is the language barrier. A lot of third, fourth generation American Armenians don't have a grasp of the language, and because of that, don't have immediate access to the latest news and are aware of what is actually happening. So this is a big problem. This is a very big problem. Obviously we have the NDA, we have the NDA YouTube channel in English. This needs to be the communities need to be more aware of this, and because there's access. This is the age of the internet. We all have access to the internet. We're just a question of having people be aware that there is this resource and they can go to it to get the information in English.
Well, maybe the follow-up question is that how do we guide these individuals to find the information they're looking for? Because we're here now. How do they?
Right.
How does some guy in Boston or LA, in New York or Ohio start? Where does he look for? It seems like a vast ocean of information.
Right. Well, through forums like this, and yeah, go ahead.
Because we know that this government will never do anything. The government that sits in Armenia now, we know they're never going to do anything, the current government. I think maybe just a suggestion that maybe NDA, because it's a pretty solid and good organization with kind of powerful ideas and stuff, maybe they can organize and declare Summer of American Armenians in Armenia and invite all American Armenians this summer to Armenia. Just kind of an open invitation. So then, once a ton of American Armenians will show up in Armenia, then they will be visible. And also maybe NDA can organize some sort of a gathering of American Armenians in Armenia, or gatherings in Los Angeles, or gatherings. You see, there must be some sort of organization that these people can access to and try to contribute. Because on an individual basis, they only get disillusioned and they cannot do anything except being a good person, good Armenian, try to live good moral life, and but that's not enough. You see, what can you do for your country? Your country also must have a need for you. They need to feel this. I mean, I don't know if I make sense, but because the way the current Armenian government is, and people who support it, because NDAs were just like few, maybe 10,000 people or 20,000 people. There's 680,000 people in Armenia who support this Pashinyan government. You see, whatever government does, they follow that. We need to illuminate people to kind of have them think alternatively, and that way an organization has to come on board, and an organization has to do something about it. On individual basis, I don't see what can they do so it will be impactful.
Well, I think that's where we have the catch-22, because you brought up the example of Israel. When Israel had their repatriation project, it was state-funded. We've had birthright and these things, but some high school or college kid or a little bit older goes, spends a wonderful summer there, comes, has some good memories, but they forget about it. There's no direct tie. Whereas we know, I don't want to keep bringing up the Israel example, but it seems to be the most logical one. They had kibbutzes. So when people like Jerry Seinfeld, where all American boys went over there, they got them to work on the land and said, this is part of your homeland, not New Jersey, not California. But it was state organized. So I think we go back to the same thing. Until we have that state organized, whether it's NDA or XYZ, they're limited in their capacity, what they can do. So my opinion is that the first and foremost thing is making the state a true state that has Armenia's interests in mind, not Moscow's or Baku's or Ankara's or God knows what else is going through their head.
Yes, but look, Israel was built by who? By European Jews and American Jews. And current Soviet Republic of Armenia is built by who? By communist Armenians. You see, there's a huge difference in this. And yes, Israel is a very good example on how to get people together. Forget their foreign policy. Forget Netanyahu's criminal government, who these people are. But Jewish people, the way they organize their homeland, the way they became powerful, there's a lot there to learn. You see, it's extremely important because Armenians are a bit delusional. We're a bit delusional. We're the type of people who are lacking self-criticism. Listen, just look at the Armenian Revolution. Look at the revolutions. American Revolution was done by who? American Revolution was done by philosophers, warriors, at the time, big landowners, and liberty lovers. So what happened after revolution? They created a country of liberty. What happened during Russian Revolution? Russian Revolution was done by who? Sociopaths, psychopaths, bloodthirsty murderers. And what country did they create afterwards? Country of cannibalism. That was the Soviet Union. Armenian Revolution, of the so-called Velvet Revolution of non-violence and this and that, was done by who? Liars and demagogues. And that's exactly the country we got. And that's the government we have, government of liars and demagogues. You see, it's very difficult for our children who are born here. These kids have a different moral code, the way they're functioning daily. These kids value individualism, value human rights, their rights. To go back to Armenia, and then they're greeted by who? By state representatives who represent what? Soviet value system. So there's a huge disconnect. There's a big disconnect between diaspora and Armenia right now in terms of just understanding life, relating to one each other. You see, this issue is much bigger. It's much global issue. It's a psychological issue. And I think that's why this disconnect exists. Unless in Armenia, a youth comes around who are more understanding, more Europe-oriented, more America-oriented, and they understand the value of liberty, and they yearn for it, then you will see no end of help from diaspora, because then diaspora Armenians will go Armenia and they feel their home. You see, a lot of diaspora Armenians go to Armenia, they admire that everybody speaks Armenian, people are nice and smiling, but they don't feel their home because they don't feel it's functioning the way they perceive life should be. Do you see this? It's a big difference in it. And in our
It's
nation,
a disconnect.
it's a big disconnect. Nobody in our nation talks about it. Nobody is really doing any studies on it. We needed studies to be done on this thing. How can we integrate American Armenians into Armenian society? We need we have so many wonderful
Actually, sorry, Hamlet, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Do American Armenians want to be integrated into Armenian society? First and foremost, that's the question. I think the major issue here is the issue of a national ideology. And who holds that national ideology? Do American Armenians hold that national ideology? And if so, how many of them do? I mean, the fact of the matter is most American Armenians, especially third, fourth generation, I mean, are assimilated. I mean, it's just a fact.
Well, I think
so. I mean,
you're right, Martin Can. But I think we're appealing to those that are interested, that feel lost, that they were part of Hominid Men or part of something.
Right. But what percentage is that? And like now, for example, for years the diaspora, especially the last 30 years, the diaspora has been making contributions, investments into Armenia, or at least has attempted to do so, the concerned segment of the Armenian diaspora population. And now it just seems as though a lot of Armenians are, just disillusioned. Seems to be no end to corruption. All the contributions that were made, what what happened to those contributions? What good did it do? All the infrastructure and road building and the north-south highway, Artsakh, this and that. And now, there's really nothing to show for any of that. So, I mean, there are so many issues here. When we were trying to come up with a title for this conversation, I suggested, the American-Armenian perspective. But actually, in retrospect, I think it should be an Armenian-American perspective, an Armenian-American perspective, because there is no one Armenian-American perspective. It all depends on, what segment of the community you come from, too. I mean, we have the older generation of Armenians, the generation that, third or fourth generation. We have Armenians that have come from the Middle East. We have the Armenians that come from Armenia. We have the Armenians that came from the Soviet Union. We have Armenians that came post-independence. So, is there an Armenian-American perspective? I think there are many Armenian-American perspectives.
Martin, let's go back to Israel. There's around more than.
I'm sorry. Let's not talk about Israel, because I can't associate with that. I mean, you're talking about Israel was founded on an ideology of Zionism. It was an ideology shared amongst a very large segment of people. I don't see the parallels between Israel and Armenia. I think they're completely different.
Can I interject here? Before I get to the next question, and I agree with both topics on the Israel, but as far as the Armenian perspective and an Armenian perspective and the ideology, for me, I think that the ideology of Armenia, and I think it's no secret that all three of us are at some level supporters of the National Democratic Alliance of Armenia. And the reason I am a supporter, I'm 56 years old. I've never been a member of any political party in the US or otherwise, and I still am not a member. I'm a supporter. And the reason I support, and I don't care if it's called NDA or, like I said, XYZ, these are the criteria for me. That group or that Armenian that accepts that we are the successors to our Republic of 1918, number one. Number two, that Armenian or that group of Armenian that believes that Artsakh, Western Armenia, and the 29,800 kilometers that Pashinyan loves to say is all one Armenia. And then most recently, number three, that the November 9th declaration should be torn up and completely disregarded. If there's any Armenian, any group that agrees with all of these three things, then I am by their side. Unfortunately, in all of Armenia, the only political force that is true to those three ideals, and for me, I mean, you could have fourth and fifth, is the National Democratic Alliance. And so if we can use that as a basis of an ideology, not mock, because you hear, they say, well, Wilsonian Armenia, what else do you want? Do you want Tigran the Great's Armenia, the C2C? Well, sure, why not? But right now, as Nicole likes to say, we have the cadastre papers, cadastri for the Wilsonian Armenia. We don't have it for Tigran the Great's Armenia. And what the National Democratic Alliance has done, that even the government of Armenia for 30 plus years hasn't done, is try to find new allies, because they realize on our own, we cannot do it. It's been proven that the greatest, strongest nation on earth, which I think is without question the US cannot do things. Even when they wanted to enter Iraq, they needed allies. So of course we need allies. It's proven that Russia is not an ally. I don't think anybody doubts that. And it's pretty obvious that the West is trying to help us. And it is only the National Democratic Alliance that is trying to fortify that alliance even though they are an opposition, and not even interparliamentary opposition. They're an outside opposition. And just in the last 8 months of lobbying, their efforts have done more than 30 years of ANCAs or assemblies. I can't even call it lobbying. At best, it's advocacy. At worst, it's milking naive American Armenians for genocide recognition. And the reason I said this is to cover a few things, that if we can use this as a basis of ideology, so for Armenian Americans to unite around, that we are the successor state to the 1918 Republic. We only lost that statehood because we were occupied, not because of any other reason. Artsakh was torn away from us because we were occupied. Nichols signed the November 9th agreement because he is an occupied entity. He is not a leader of a sovereign nation. So I wanted to get in that. Your thoughts on that? And by the way, we have about 8 minutes left, so if we can do a couple of minutes each, and we'll look forward to more programs where we can cover a lot more. Hamletcan, any thoughts on what I mentioned?
Well, I think that the issue is bigger issue than those three things that you have described. Those three elements are for people who are more daily looking into Armenian politics. Most of people in diaspora do not look daily. It's an idea. It's an idea of homeland. You see, I want people to be connected to their roots, an idea of a homeland. So the reason I was bringing the Israeli example, just for that reason, because many Jews went over there really not believing in Zionism. But there was this national idea of having a homeland. You see, we are lacking that idea. Nobody is teaching that to our children. Nobody talks about that in Armenia. So the disconnect, the reason is not only just there is no ideology that connects us. The disconnect is because there is no moral code that connects us to each other. You understand that? We are disjointed from each other. We believe into different things. So a few specific things about Wilsonian Armenia and stuff. It's me, you, whoever daily looks into it, values that. But we need much bigger idea to invite people to Armenia, because only massive amount of people from diaspora going to Armenia will change Armenia. I really believe so. Otherwise, the way it's going right now, losing Artsakh and supporting this government and stuff, I really don't see much hope. Unless there's a movement from diaspora to Armenia. Do you guys see any other way of changing things in Armenia?
Well, I already spoke, so I'll let Martin answer, and if I have a moment, I'll try to wrap it up. Martin-Can, regarding.
I think change needs to come internally. Change needs to come internally. The people of Armenia have to want that change, and the NDA right now is the only real political force that's proposing such a change and has a roadmap, that has a plan. Unlike a lot of other organizations, political parties that claim they want change, but they're not providing any kind of alternative or any kind of program or roadmap. So this is why the NDA is so important right now. And the NDA needs to be supported. It needs to be supported internally.
Martin, since you mentioned the roadmap, I'm sorry to interject. For the viewers, I wanted to let them know that if you are, because a lot of them say, well, what's the plan? What are they doing? You can easily go to AJBever, so that's AJBEVER.com. That is NDA's website, and there it's in Russian, English, and Armenian, and it has, aside from videos and photographs, it actually has a step-by-step roadmap, and it has it in two sections. One which is more detailed, and one which is much simpler. So depending on how much time you have to read it. So it's funny because I told friends, well, what is the NDA doing? And I send them the link to the website, and then they say, well, who has time to read that? I said, first you said they don't have a plan. Now you're saying you don't have time to read it. So, and I understand, especially being in the US, we're, you know, the 9 to 5 no longer exists. We're very busy. But if your heart goes out and you are the American Armenian that wants to do something, at least take the time to familiarize yourself. And if you feel that it's all hot air to you, then of course move on. But before you make up your mind, at least see what these people are doing. I'm sorry, Martin, you can continue. I just
no worries. I just wish we had more time to continue this conversation, because there's a lot of stuff to cover that
we'll do it soon.
We really didn't get a chance to. But like you know, a lot of American Armenians that I encounter have the attitude that, oh well, those are great ideals, but we have to support the Pashinyan government because we have to support whatever government's in charge. And this attitude is, you'll find it amongst many diasporan Armenians. But it's kind of like saying, well, if you're Russian, then you have to support Putin. I mean, there's so much dissent against Putin outside of Russia, and that's why it's kind of absurd that when American Armenians are talking about, the supporting Armenia, they are automatically talking about supporting the current regime, regardless of what that regime or who that regime might be. So again, another long topic for discussion.
That was actually one of the questions I didn't get to, but we'll cover that next time. The question was, Pashinyan seems to be headed in the right direction. Why don't we let him do what he wants? Wouldn't any interference cause greater problems? I'm sure we have our thoughts on that. Right. And as I said, we'll try to make this on a more regular basis. The three of us, like almost everyone else, we have families and we're very busy, but we will take the time. Please go on the website. Again, it's ajbever.com. They also have a Telegram channel and a Facebook page and Instagram. So there's different ways to look at. And as far as the English language, we'll try to have more content on the English language. The YouTube channel is National Democratic Alliance of Armenia. And Hamlet, Martin, I, and maybe others will be back soon. And Hamletjan, if you want to wrap up, we have 1 minute left to say a closing word.
I want to say we definitely need to bring into this discussion more American Armenians. People who are born here, like Martin, and younger, different generation. Because look, you, we were born in Armenia. These ties are still there. It's very important that our children's generation or one generation above us who were born here and they have the American outlook to life, to hear their opinions. What do they think? Let's say the thing that Martin said, why do they so blindly support Pashinyan government? I actually have an answer to that, but it's a long answer.
We'll leave that for the next time.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, guys, and we'll see each other soon.
Thank you, Gokor.
Thank you.